Next on the show, it's time for my guest, Bonnie Wright. Now, Bonnie's best known for her role in the Harry Potter films as Ginny Weasley. Now, she recently celebrated the film's 20th anniversary with the original cast, and since making the films, she's become an environmental campaigner and activist. Now, she's just published her first book, Go Gently, Actionable Steps to Nurture Yourself, which is out now, and she's here to talk about going green, as this week Radio 2 and The One Show have joined forces to go green. Bonnie, welcome to the show.
Thank you, I'm pleased to be here.
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to talking to you. You made your professional acting debut in Harry Potter. How did that come about?
Yeah, sure. I'd never had any previous acting experience. I was only 9 years old when I started acting in Harry Potter, and actually my older brother Lewis had read the first 2 books that were out at the time, and he was when we heard that they were making these books into films, he was very specifically like, you should play Ginny Weasley. He was the casting director, I guess, and so managed to get an audition, and 2 auditions later got the part. So it was I never thought I would get it. I had no experience. I thought, someone with a lot more experience would get it. So it was quite a, big, huge life shift, and it ended up being 10 years of my life, like through being a child and teenager.
I guess being part of such a huge and well-loved franchise throughout your childhoods, I imagine there was a sort of roller coaster of emotions with that, a lot of highs, but also were there some struggles and difficulties with having to, I guess, in some ways grow up in public?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think sometimes too, as it's happening to you, you have no other sort of other life or experience without it to relate to. You kind of, with all of us, we only know our own unique perspective of life. So it was kind of knowing when to sort of accept or say, oh yeah, this is actually quite strange, a living like this, being recognized on my way to school, on the tube, or all those kind of things as you're already going through, I feel, a lot during those ages anyway as a teenager. We were quite disconnected sometimes, really, when we were filming, to the kind of phenomena and scale of the franchise, until we kind of went to a premiere or were doing promotion around each film. It was only in those moments were you exposed to the reality of the series. But then when you weren't at a premiere, we were just kind of quietly on the film sets in a very kind of comfortable, casual environment.
I mean, that's fascinating to hear, because for something so successful to feel quite disconnected from that, sounds like you had a very strong network and community and family around you, but also with the cast, only really, I guess, getting exposed to that, now and again at a premiere. That's really interesting, because I kind of, in my head, I draw the comparison to many, I guess, teenagers. In some ways, I'm sure the struggle might be potentially harder for some people these days who might feel quite isolated, constantly being online, thinking that what they're seeing each day is real, thinking the comments that may be coming on their profile are, are more real than potentially they are. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, definitely. I honestly, when I kind of have conversations with like friends who are parents, or even just with children, like I do think it's really hard, because like you say, there's that like extreme connectivity, but almost lots of disconnectivity, because you're not really having those nuanced in-person dialogues. Like, I don't know, you begin to read that we're becoming less able to read people's facial expressions when we're talking to them, because we spend less time around people, and just like how much, that becomes more a realistic shaping of character, rather than, as you say, like things that are presented online that can often be not quite what they are. And I feel like I meet a lot of people, from my experience in the climate movement, where they do physically meet up with people, and they do kind of like know the importance of community and grassroots kind of movements. So I do think there's a kind of shift away from it.
And I'll be talking more to Bonnie Wright after this. Style Council here on BBC Radio 2, and I'm still here with my guest, Bonnie Wright.
BBC Radio 2, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee.
Our theme this week is all about going green. Do you remember the first time where you started to become interested in the environment and climate change?
Yeah, sure. I think without realizing it from a young age, I definitely grew up in a family that really looked at things that we owned and what was around us as precious things. We weren't kind of wasteful, and I was always taught to kind of look after the things I had, which I think is a big thing too about when you look at actions we can take for the climate. It's not always about buying the next best sustainable thing. It's also really about how do we tend to what we have so that we don't kind of consume more things. So I think that was already part of my kind of upbringing. I was also a kid that used to love to show up to things. I loved kind of every extra thing you could do at school. So I think that is quite a part of kind of advocacy and activism work, your just desire to really show up to an issue. But when it comes to specifically climate issues, I guess firsthand I was really beginning to see, more single-use plastics and plastics pollution on beaches and in the water. Coastal environments have always been my favorite place to be. And so seeing somewhere that I enjoyed begin to be kind of polluted, I was like, why is this happening? Is it our fault? Is there something also maybe wrong with the waste system that this is ending up here? So that began my kind of curiosity, and then that led me to work with Greenpeace in the UK and go on various trips with them, trawling for microplastics, which is when you put a net down into the water and collect data on the plastics that's in that waterway or sea or ocean. And it was seeing that firsthand, the reality of literally every single time I've ever trawled for microplastics, we've brought something up in that net, which is just shocking. And just imagining how much water there is in the world, and we were just testing one tiny part of it.
I've been reading some of the material around your new book, Go Gently, and there's one thing you said which really stuck with me. This is a guide to imperfect action that's going to be different for everyone. I found that really fascinating, because that quest for perfection of, if I can't do it all, what's the point in doing anything? For me as a doctor, I see that being an obstacle to people making changes in their life. They think it's all or nothing. But I guess through the lens of the environment and the climate, it's the same kind of thing, isn't it? That desire for perfection can often mean that we actually don't end up doing anything at all.
Yeah, totally. And I think, as you say, drawing on your own experience, it's that same thing of we see these sort of stereotypes of maybe health, or we see stereotypes of, activism. And it's this idea that they're 100% committed and never make a mistake. And I think that has been kind of damaging to people wanting to give it a go, because they think, well, I don't want to fail, and I'm scared of failing, or I don't really know where to start, so I won't start at all. So yeah, as you say, the language in my book, and a real huge intention behind the book, is to really kind of help use language to make people feel that whatever they want to do, or whatever angle they're coming at, is valid and needed. And I don't think, I think a lot of kind of perfectionism and ego in a way has got in the way of people kind of just trying, and knowing that our lives change. You could implement something into your day-to-day life, whether that's kind of a shift in your buying habits, or a shift in how you cook, or what waste you're creating. And 2 weeks later, you could drop that habit because life happens, and that's okay, and knowing that that's okay. And then maybe the following week you pick it back up again. And I think if you create that kind of space and environment, then I feel it's more obtainable and accessible, and it's not I guess alienating to people. And I've always been just so many people that I've connected with and spoken to have really got stuck in that space of kind of intimidated to give it a go, basically.
I'll be back talking to Bonnie after this. That was George Benson, and I'm still here with my guest, Bonnie Wright.
Dr. Rangan Chatterjee on BBC Radio 2.
One of the things I really like about these small changes that we can start doing in our own homes, in areas and environments that we really like, to start off with, is It kind of sounds to me as though it's helping people, it's going to help people live more slowly, more intentionally. I kind of feel that this disconnected way of living where we aren't intentional about the choices we're making, about the little things we do from day to day, I think that's part of the problem. So I really like, you've decided in your kitchen to focus on single-use plastic as a starting point. And it's just, for me, it sounds like that's a really good step to a more intentional life, a more present life, which has a ripple effect. And it turns, it's going to lead to people living a more intentional life in other areas and make more pro-planet choices or pro-health choices. Would you agree with that in any way?
Yeah, definitely. I think, I speak about this in the book, that this whole, these things that I have been implementing in my day-to-day life have obviously not only connected me to the joyous, great, amazing things that we have on this planet and we can still save, but also just notice in my habits, like, what am I choosing to do out of convenience or societal norms of like productivity and being busy and being on the go and being fast and those or just kind of consumption. Like, when I look at a choice, am I making that because I genuinely need it, or is it just a want kind of feeling?
Yeah, for sure. This is Radio 2's Health and Wellbeing show. I always love to ask my guests at the end a little bit about health and well-being, and on that kind of spirit of small things that we can do each day that will make a big impact. Like, I'm interested, are there things that you find that you need to do, you like to do, that when you do them consistently they really help you with sort of physical health, mental resilience, those kinds of things?
Yeah, definitely. For me, something that I did a lot during the writing process of this book, and I think I've always done, is the simple act of taking a walk. Like, I really love walking as just, it doesn't have to be running or this like high intensity exercise, but to me it really feels quite meditative, walking. And sometimes if I get just a bit stuck on an idea or with a project or an emotion, I find just like simply walking around my neighborhood, and I don't mean walking and going on some, nature hike, I just mean, simple city walk, for me has always really helped me. And I think I was so used to, I grew up in London, you could walk everywhere, so walking has always been part of my kind of like, muscle memory maybe. And other things, like I said, I do enjoy the kitchen. I know that's not the space that everyone loves, but cooking just like a very simple kind of meal that I've actually, chopped the vegetables and cooked, I find a very relaxing and soothing kind of experience. And then honestly, leaning on other people is often like a thing that makes me feel good. And definitely I'm someone who has a split personality of like being quite an introvert and being quite happy on my own, but then also knowing when I really need to be around people to just take me outside of my story and just like diffuse the day by chatting to friends. Or within these issues, you can feel quite overwhelmed when it comes to the climate. So for me, leaning on friends is very helpful.
Well, thanks for sharing that. Thanks for taking some time out of your diary to join us on the show. All the best with the book, Go Gently. I think it's got the potential to change a lot of lives. And take care and hopefully see you soon.
Thank you. It's been lovely to speak with you.